I'm talking about Dispatch late. This video was originally going to be a straight breakdown. The story, the characters, and the twists. Why it felt fresh. I even started writing that version and got the script mostly done. But the more time passed, the more I realized that kind of video wouldn't have actually explained why this game stayed with me. Because Dispatch didn't hit me as hard when I first played it, it hit me months later. Once I understood why, this stopped being a review and turned into something completely different. This is a video about what Dispatch really is about, and why I connected in a way where I really could never have expected. This also isn't a normal review. I'm not here to rank hero mechanics or argue about frame rates or whether to say Dispatch is worth the money. There's already videos out there that can do a way better job than I ever could. What I care about is why some games disappear from your mind the moment you finish them, and why others sit with you. Not because of a twist or a character or a choice I made, but it quietly articulated a phase of life that most games completely skip. And that's what this video is truly about. At a surface level, Dispatch is a narrative-driven superhero game, played similarly to Minecraft Story Mode. You watch the story unfold, making dialogue choices and managing situations, and also deciding how events play out. The twist is that instead of playing as a superhero in the field, you play as a dispatcher. You manage missions, assign heroes, and deal with the consequences of those choices. And your team isn't made up of perfect heroes, it's made up of former villains trying to redeem themselves. There's humor, chaos, awkward moments, and surprisingly strong character writing. On paper, it's a clear spin on the genre, but Dispatch isn't memorable because of the format. It's memorable because who you play as. You play as Robert Robertson III. His grandfather was a hero called Mecha Man Prime. No powers, just a mechanical suit with sheer willpower. He died in battle inside of that suit. His father followed his footsteps and met the exact same fate. Robert grows up surrounded by legacy, expectation, and loss. He becomes Mecha Man Blue and spends years chasing the villain responsible for his father's death. But then he fails. His suit is destroyed and he barely survives. The role he's built his entire identity around almost disappears overnight. So instead of being a hero in the spotlight, Robert becomes a dispatcher. He's still involved. He still helps save people, but he's no longer that guy. In that transition from being defined by action and momentum to sitting behind a desk is where Dispatch quietly becomes something special. One of the reasons Dispatch's story works isn't just because of the big plot points. It's the small, almost throwaway moments. Moments where humor and awkwardness or even chaos reveals how broken and how human these characters really are. There is a scene where you run into a former villain in a bar, someone that you put in jail. You're given a choice that doesn't feel heroic at all. You can escalate the situation by throwing alcohol on him, which burns him, which makes no sense because he's a fireproof villain, or you can throw water at him, which kind of de-escalates the situation, but it de-escalates it in a messy, imperfect way. Either option leads to a funny consequence, but both consequences are very human. These moments matter because they reinforce something that's very important. This world isn't clean anymore. Heroes aren't untouchable. Villains aren't just evil. Everyone is dealing with the aftermath of who they used to be, and that reflects Robert's situation perfectly. He's no longer operating in a world with clear victories. He's managing damage, people, and fallout. That tone is intentional. Dispatch isn't about glory, it's about aftermath. This is the part of the story that doesn't get talked about enough. Robert isn't a failure. He isn't useless. He isn't broken. What he is stagnant. And that's a very specific type of pain, because stagnation doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't show, it doesn't look like rock bottom. It just feels like you're watching everything slow down while the world keeps moving. You're still capable. You're still trying, but the version of yourself that you were building towards is gone, and you don't know what replaces it. Stagnation isn't hard to talk about because it doesn't look like failure. There's no dramatic collapse. There's no clear moment where everything breaks. It's just waking up one day and realizing the version of yourself that you were chasing doesn't make sense anymore. You have nothing to replace it with. You're still useful. You're still capable. You're still doing something, but it doesn't feel like you. Dispatch sits at that discomfort. It forces you to live there. You don't get a quick montage. You don't get a motivational pivot. What you get is just you. You just exist in that space where progress used to be, and that's why this feels so accurate. Most superhero games are power fantasies. You're fast, you're strong, you're decisive. The world reacts to you. Dispatch does something uncomfortable instead. It puts you in a chair, you don't throw a punch, you don't take a hit, and you don't get the glory. You advise, you wait. You deal with the consequences after the fact. That shift matters because it mirrors what happens when life stops letting you be the main character in your own story. You don't stop caring, you don't stop contributing, but your role changes. Dispatch understands that losing the spotlight doesn't mean losing your value, even if it feels like it. One of the smartest things that Dispatch does is separate role from identity. Robert thinks that he is Mecha Man, so when the suit is gone, he feels like he is gone. But the game slowly pushes back on that idea. You watch Robert still lead, still care, still influence outcomes, just in quieter ways. And that's where it's uncomfortable, because it forces a question that a lot of people do not want to ask. If your title disappears, who are you? Dispatch doesn't give an easy answer. It just shows the identity can survive role loss, but only if you let it change. At some point it clicked. Momentum doesn't last forever. Growth stalls. Stagnation happens. And returning to it doesn't always feel the same. Robert's journey from hero to dispatcher back to hero again mirrors the way that feels honest. You regain what you lost, but differently, better in some ways. You're not alone. That's what makes this story so reliable. If you're watching this and you feel like you're in the middle of your story, it's not the beginning. It's not the payout. This game understands you. If you've had momentum before and you're still waiting for it to come back, Dispatch understands you. And if you're moving again, it doesn't feel the exact same. And that's kind of the point. Growth doesn't always have to feel exciting the second time. Sometimes it feels quieter, safer, shared. Dispatch treats that as progress, not a compromise. The story leads differently depending on how you play it. The story is so relatable to the current and future college graduates. You graduate college after doing so many things at once, you're now stuck floating in a job market, and it takes a while to find your footing and find where you want to go. The story lands differently depending on when you play it. If you're early in your journey, it feels like a warning. If you're deep into that in-between phase, it feels like validation. A lot of people who are raised with the idea that growth is supposed to be linear, that if you keep moving forward, things will stack in a way that they're supposed to. But real life doesn't work like that. Not anymore. Careers stall, industries shift, momentum comes and goes, and for the first time, a lot of people are realizing that the middle of their story might last longer than what they expect. Dispatch doesn't push past that middle. It treats it as meaningful, and that is rare. Not because it had the biggest budget, but because it reinvented gameplay. But it understood something emotionally that most games avoid. It told a story about legacy, loss, stagnation, rebuilding, and connection after isolation. That kind of storytelling doesn't entertain, it resonates. Dispatch stood out because it was emotionally honest. Dispatch didn't hit as hard for me when I first played it. It hit harder later, when the phase of life that Robert's story has portrayed finally caught up to me. Growth isn't linear. Momentum can disappear and return differently. Sometimes losing a version of yourself is what makes room for something healthier. Progress doesn't always come with an applause. Sometimes it comes quietly in things like stability, connection, and a shared effort. Dispatch understands returning to motion doesn't mean returning to isolation. And maybe that's the most meaningful thing that this game can say. Not that you'll become who you were again, but because you don't have to do it alone this time. What do you think? Do you think I'm just grasping at straws that aren't there? Or do you understand what I'm saying and agree with me? Let me know down below, and I hope you have a good one. Peace!